Hello, my bookish friends. My name is Alex, and welcome to a new book haul. I am so excited to show you guys some of the new books that I have been picking up over the last couple of months. I have a couple different categories that I want to go through. We are going to start with books that I have been purchasing recently, so a lot of physical copies and I think one audiobook that I've actually purchased and paid for with my own money. Then we will be getting into some physical ARCs that I have received from my local bookstore. I have a local bookseller who sometimes includes ARCs with your purchase, so I've got a couple of those to share because I've been buying a lot of books. And then some ARCs that I have requested on NetGalley and been approved for, just to kind of let you guys know what upcoming releases I'm looking into, interested in, things you can look for in upcoming monthly wrap-ups. So I wanted to try out something different, try it that way for a little while and see what you guys think. You can let me know in the comments if you like this structure or if you'd prefer to go back to just separated by genres. I would love to know your opinion and what is kind of the most useful and interesting method for you. So starting off with books that I have purchased recently, I will still separate these into genres so that you can be aware of what you're getting into with each section. We've got a lot of fantasy and some romance to get into today, and I am so excited to show you guys some of these books. I have been getting the best books recently, and some of these I have already read and loved. Some of these are my most anticipated reads coming up soon, so really good haul I think we have here today. And we are going to start off with a couple of romance books that I picked up. Starting off with Do I Know You? This is by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. I have not read this one yet. I was hoping to read it for a book club a couple of weeks ago and just didn't end up happening, but I am still really looking forward to getting into this one. This is actually about a married couple who've been married for 5 years and are going on their 5-year anniversary vacation, but they're experiencing a little bit of conflict within their marriage. And when they're on this vacation, they are in the hotel bar, I believe it is, and someone in the bar thinks that they don't know each other and introduces them to one another, and they decide to just kind of go along with it and kind of pretend to be getting to know each other for the first time on this vacation. So it sounds like an interesting concept. I've heard good things. Somebody who I really trust on Bookstagram gave it a rave review on GOODREADS, and you don't see a lot of like romances about already married couples. I myself, being married, thought this sounded pretty interesting. I also just celebrated my 5-year anniversary, so thought it was interesting that they are on their 5-year anniversary trip. So really looking forward to picking this one up. It looks a little summery, so maybe I will read this one over the next couple of months. But if you have read this and enjoyed it, let me know down below. You know I'm not a huge romance reader, but this one sounded really interesting to me, so looking forward to that. Then for an upcoming buddy read that I'm doing, I got People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I have so far read Beach Read and Book Lovers. I am really looking forward to People We Meet on Vacation, even though people tend to say this is their least favorite Emily Henry. I really like the friends to lovers trope, so I'm hoping that I will still enjoy this one. I have also heard that they go on vacation to Croatia at some point in this story, and I have been to Croatia once and I really loved it. So I think that'll be a fun like addition, is like knowing the place that they're in that I've been to. So that'll be fun. I am looking forward to reading this with a friend in the next couple of weeks. So you will probably see this in a wrap-up video very soon. And while we're talking about Emily Henry, the romance book that is probably in everyone's hauls right now, I got Happy Place, and I'm currently reading this. I'm like 2 chapters in, so I can tell you pretty much nothing, but this is Emily Henry's newest release, just came out in April, and I'm really excited to have my hands on this and to be getting started with it. This is kind of a second chance romance slash fake dating trope story. We are following our couple who has been together for 8 years and has recently broken up, but hasn't told any of their friends, and they kind of end up in this situation on vacation with all of their friends, and in order to not ruin the trip for their friends, they decide to fake it during the trip and tell their friends after the trip is over that they've split up. And so, of course, that puts them into an interesting situation, pretending that they are still together on this vacation with their friends and maybe uncovering some lingering feelings. We'll have to see. I'm only a couple chapters in, but I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. And that is it for my romance, since I'm not a huge romance girly, but I do have a little bit of fantasy romance coming up later in the kind of new adult fantasy romance genre, so stick around for that. One of my like absolute favorite new books is in this section, so make sure you stick around for that if you're interested in fantasy romance. But next up, we are going to do young adult fantasy, starting with The Isles of the Gods by Amy Kaufman. This is a brand new release, just came out in May, and I did get an arc of this through NetGalley and was able to read it early. So I can tell you that I enjoyed this book. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I expected to. I had pre-ordered a copy and requested an arc thinking that this was going to be kind of an absolute favorite YA fantasy for me. And I really liked it, but it just felt like it was missing something for me. You can hear more of my thoughts about it in my April wrap-up because I discussed it pretty in-depth there. But in this story, we are following our main character, Sally, who has grown up on the sea on ships, and she wants to be a captain of a ship one day. So she's training to do that, and her ship that she has been working on gets commandeered by the prince, who needs her and the crew to take him to the Isles of the Gods to perform a sacrifice in order to strengthen their god and prevent war with another country. There are also some magical elements in this and lots of kind of found family tropes, and then the high seas adventure as well. So this is a pretty fun one, and I do recommend it if you want just like a solid found family YA high seas adventure. I do think this is a good one. And again, you can hear the rest of my thoughts in my April wrap-up. Next up is a sequel to a book that I really loved last year, and that is The Stolen Throne by Abigail Owen. This is the sequel to The Liar's Crown, which I actually talked about last year in my underrated YA fantasy reads video. So if you've not heard of The Liar's Crown, check out that video above to kind of hear more of my thoughts on that. But this is kind of a twin princesses story with a kind of forbidden romance, a man with shadow powers, which I know people tend to love, and I just really enjoyed this story. So basically, our main character is the second twin princess. She has been raised in secret to stand in for her sister when there's kind of dangerous situations to keep her sister from getting killed. And during her sister's coronation to become queen, she is standing in and actually gets kidnapped by this kind of shadow power man who may or may not have bad intentions. And I'm really looking forward to the second book in this series and continuing on because I really did enjoy The Liar's Crown. So that is The Stolen Throne by Abigail Owen. Next up, we actually have another book that I am currently in the middle of, and that is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. This is the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition. We've got this like different font on it, and I believe it also has special end papers. There was a pre-order gift for getting this one, and there's beautiful like foiled map bookmark that came with it. There's the other side. Really pretty, so I got that for submitting my pre-order receipt. I'm currently reading this one. It is a young adult urban fantasy with King Arthur mythology woven into the lore and world. We are following our main character Tamsin, who is a hollower, which are basically people who search for lost magical relics and steal them and sell them or give them back to the people they belong to for a price. She ends up learning about a job to find an object that she's been looking for a really long time that she thinks might be able to break the curse that is on her brother. So she sets out to complete this job not only for the money but also for personal reasons because she wants to save her brother. And this job ends up being steeped in King Arthur mythology and possibly taking her to a magical realm. So I'm really enjoying this one. The beginning was a little bit slow for me. I'm not a huge urban fantasy person, but once we got deeper into the lore, I'm really invested and looking forward to seeing how this one ends. If you want to know my full thoughts, it will be on my May wrap-up at the end of the month. Next up, we have A Door in the Dark by Scott Raingen, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm so sorry if that's incorrect. Wow. It's got a really shiny cover, but this is so interesting It's got this like wax motif. I think it's really beautiful. Anyways, this is the first book in a new fantasy series that was compared to A Deadly Education meets like a YA murder mystery type of story. We are following a group of 6 students who go to this magical academy and are using the portal system, which is called Waxway. It has to do with candle magic. It's very interesting. I'm not going to go into deep detail about it, but they are basically in the portal room getting ready to go to their respective homes for like a school break. And because they end up getting into an argument, somebody is using magic when the portal activates, they actually get thrown off course, end up in the middle of the forest in the wilderness where it's really unsafe. They don't know really how to get home, and one of them is dead when they arrive. So they're trying to figure out how he died. Did someone kill him? What happened? And how do we get home? How far away from home are we? What are we gonna do? This one has a very interesting magic system where magic is almost a form of currency within this world. There's like a certain amount of magic you have to use to be able to perform a spell, and they have to kind of ration out their magic, which is a really interesting element. And I did really enjoy this one. However, I felt like it gave some claims that it didn't quite live up to. You can hear more about it when I review it at the end of the month. Next, we have an Illumicrate exclusive edition, which is Song of Silver, Flame Lake Night. You guys, this book is absolutely stunning. I am so excited to jump into this one. This is by Amelie Wen Zhao, and I believe this was the February book for Illumicrate. So we have an exclusive, gorgeous cover with a colorway change. We have the absolutely stunning edges, which I believe these are the gods from the story, and they're printed on the edges. They're so gorgeous. Got some character art on the end papers, a gorgeous hardcover as well. So this one is a young adult fantasy inspired by Chinese mythology, where we follow a young woman who has secret magical powers that she will have to unlock in order to save her kingdom from their colonizers. I am really looking forward to this one. It sounds just like a really vibrant and exciting world to dive into, and I'm really interested in the Chinese folklore and gods that we get to meet throughout this story. So really looking forward to picking this one up, and so happy to have such an absolutely stunning edition of this book. Next, we have Flower Heart by Catherine Bakewell, another young adult fantasy. This one is about a young woman who has magic that causes flowers to bloom according to her emotions, and in a lot of places where she doesn't intend them to, including inside of her father's heart, which is very dangerous for him, and she has to team up with her ex-best friend in order to try to save her father. This one I have read and reviewed already. It was sweet. It was very like vibey springtime. I really enjoyed that aspect. I did enjoy our main character's like internal growth. However, the romance in this one just didn't really do it for me, and it felt very similar to The Nature of Witches, but I do think I prefer The Nature of Witches over this one. However, I will still continue to follow this author. This is a YA debut for this author, and I'm interested to see what they're going to do in the future. Next up is another sequel, and that is Immortality, a Love Story by Dana Schwartz. I absolutely loved Anatomy, a Love Story, and I read Immortality already and actually loved it even more than the first book. This is a series, a duology, it's already completed, I believe, where we follow our main character, Hazel Sennett, who is a young woman living in the 1800s in Scotland, I believe, and she really wants to become a surgeon. However, that is frowned upon as she is a woman, so she dresses up as a man and signs up to take anatomy classes. When she's discovered, she makes a deal with the professor that if she can pass the exam without taking the classes, that she will be permitted to become a surgeon. So she begins to team up with a grave robber to dig up dead bodies so that she can practice on them, and lots of things ensue from there. There is a little bit of fantasy in it as well, but I'm not going to spoil anything. I really enjoy this duology, and especially the historical aspects that begin to pop up more and more in this book. I also picked up a copy of Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I ended up getting this off of PANGOBOOKS because I really wanted the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition to match my copy of The Ballad of Never After, and of course this one's not being sold in stores anymore, so thankfully I found a used copy and I just love it so much. It's got the beautiful pink cover and then underneath the stunning hardback. This is a spin-off series by Stephanie Garber that is a spin-off of Caraval, and we are following one of the fates that we meet in Caraval, as well as a woman named Evangeline who has discovered that the man she loves is going to marry her sister, and so she makes a deal with a fate to stop the wedding, and lots of chaos ensues from there. I will not go into too many details to spoil Caraval or to spoil this series, but I am so looking forward to the third book coming out at the end of this year, and this series has been so much fun to read. I'm really happy to have a copy of the first one to add to my collection. And the last young adult book that I have to talk to you guys about is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I will not go into too many details about this. I have talked about this book so much. It was one of my favorites of last year, and I just decided that I needed to own a copy for my collection because I will definitely be rereading this at some point. But in this story, we follow Mona, a 14-year-old bread wizard who works in her aunt and uncle's bakery, and one morning discovers a dead body. At first, Mona is accused of being the murderer, and she has to team up with some unlikely friends to figure out who the true suspect is and possibly save all of the magic users in her world. I adore this book. I think it's so wonderful. It's such a great cozy fantasy read, and I will go back to this book over and over again. So now I own a copy and can do it whenever I want to. Moving on to our adult fantasy books, I am so excited to talk to you guys about one of my absolute favorite books that just recently came out. I am so happy to have a copy to hold in my hands and admire on my shelves. I've literally just been staring at it since I brought it home last week. It's absolutely stunning, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. You guys, I was lucky enough to have an audio arc of this book and absolutely devoured it. I'm sure you've seen it around on Bookstagram, BookTube, everywhere. It's got these gorgeous edges. I'm sure you've seen them because everyone is talking about this book right now, and for absolutely good reason. This book is incredible. I highly recommend it. I just had the absolute best time reading it and I'm already considering a reread. So Fourth Wing is about our main character, Violet Sorengale, who struggles with chronic illness and has been planning her whole life to become a scribe like her father. However, after the death of her father, her mother, who is the general of the dragon riders, has decided that Violet is going to become a dragon rider. She is going to enter in to the War College, where she will either earn a dragon or die. And her mom does not care which one, but she is determined that Violet is going to go to this school either way. So our character is thrust into this school that she's not prepared for. It is a very ruthless environment. People are willing to kill one another in order to have better chances of being chosen by a dragon. And of course, there is a bit of romance going on. Our main character's childhood best friend is here, as well as the man she is supposed to stay very far away from, whose father was the head of the rebellion and the man that her mother killed. So we've got a lot going on here. It is absolutely so much fun. The romance is a wonderful slow burn type of situation, which I just absolutely adored. The dragons and the lore of this world is so interesting and so well done. This is definitely for the girls who grew up on Twilight and Divergent and Aragon, Hunger Games, all of those things. If you loved those growing up, this is the new adult fantasy that is written for you. You need to read it. It's so good. And if you want to get this stunning edition with the edges, I know that these are like really hard to find already. This was only on the first print run and it's already like almost sold out. So if you want to get this edition, you better hurry up and do it very soon. Go find a copy because I believe these are not going to be printed again, and it's just such a gorgeous book. I love it so much, and I hope that you guys all pick it up and read it. If you want to hear me talk about it for like way too long, you can go check out my April wrap up where I just like ramble about it for like almost 10 minutes. Next in the adult fantasy category, I'm going to hold this up even though this physical book I already owned, but I actually purchased the audiobook of House of Sky and Breath, so I wanted to include it in this haul because I did buy another copy of this book. I wanted to read this as a buddy read with a friend a couple of months ago, and I just knew that I needed the audiobook in order to be able to do that, just because they're so long and I'm not like fully invested in this series, but I am. I don't know. You can hear all about it in my wrap up where I talk about it, but I did buy the audiobook of House of Sky and Breath, which is unfortunately Audible exclusive, which drives me bananas, but I got it, so I'm including it in this haul. House of Sky and Breath. Do you even need me to tell you what Crescent City by Sarah J Maas is? It's her most recent adult fantasy romance series set in kind of a more urban setting, following our main character Bryce Quinlan, who is investigating a murder that happened in this world where there are like tons of werewolves and vampires and mermaids and all the different types of creatures you could ever think of. So that's House of Sky and Breath, including it because yes, I bought a second copy of this, and that's all. And the last one that I'm going to be talking about in books that I have purchased is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshni Chokshi. This book is a gothic adult fantasy romance story. We are basically following two different timelines that are stories about this woman named Indigo. In the present day timeline, we are following from the perspective of her husband and kind of learning about them visiting this old family home of hers and kind of him digging into her past, even though he's promised her that he will not do that. And then we also have this timeline where we are following Indigo from the perspective of her childhood best friend and this kind of like toxic female friendship that they develop and their obsession with fairies and the other world and kind of becoming fairies. It's a very like creepy, dark, interesting, kind of twisted story. I didn't personally love it as much as I expected to, but I know a lot of people who really did. So if you're looking for kind of a gothic kind of fairy tale type of story, this might be a good one to try. Next, we are going to move on into the section of physical ARCs. Like I said at the beginning, I got these kind of gifted to me from my local bookstore as like gift with purchase or at different events that I've attended. Some of these I'm really interested in and some of them I know almost nothing about. The first one I have to show you is The Last Map Maker. I believe this is like a middle grade STEM story with dragons and a high seas adventure. Honestly, that is all that I can tell you. I know next to nothing about this, but it looks cute and fun and I do intend to pick it up at some point. Then we have How to Succeed at Witchcraft by Alison Brophy. Again, another one I know very little about. This is a witchy young adult fantasy story and it looks like it has an academic setting. It says, "Come for the crackling queer banter, stay for the history of magic." Captivating, romantic, and deeply powerful. So this one sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to jumping into this one maybe as like a fall read. This is one of my most anticipated ones from this stack. It is Garden of the Cursed by Katie Rose Poole. And of course, I'm now like blanking on what this is about. It says all that glitters can be cursed. And I believe this is a June release. In this edge of your seat YA fantasy mystery duology, Cursebreaker Marlowe Briggs reluctantly pretends to be in love with one of the most powerful nobles in Karaza City to gain entry into an illustrious and deadly society that holds clues to her mother's disappearance. That sounds really good. I'm really looking forward to jumping into this one. I like the like secret society infiltration type trope. This sounds really fun and I'm definitely looking forward to this, and you can pick it up in June. This is Good Fortune by C.K. Chow. I don't even know what genre this is. It says a whip-smart, charming debut novel set in contemporary Chinatown that brilliantly reimagines Pride and Prejudice, exploring family ties, cultural and class divides, and of course, love. Wow, I like wasn't that excited about this until I heard Pride and Prejudice. Wow, this sounds really fun, and if you've not heard of that, that's Good Fortune. Next up is one that I have read and was deeply disappointed by, and that is A Crown of Ivy and Glass by Claire Legrand. You guys, this was a new adult fantasy romance that I was super excited to dive into, and I had the physical arc and also an audio arc from NetGalley, but yeah, this was a huge disappointment for me. Just did not love it. We are following our main character whose family are very powerful magic users except for her. She is actually really sick when she's around magic, even around her family members when they use magic. And her family has this feud with another magical family. So when she meets this young man who approaches her and asks for her help getting kind of in the good graces of the queen, he offers to help her find the demon that he thinks is responsible for her family's feud, and they team up to go off and hunt this demon together. And I was really looking forward to it. I thought it would be a really fun fantasy romance read, and I just did not vibe with our main characters at all, which was a bummer. I really think the world is super interesting, so I was really bummed that I didn't like the characters, but you can hear more about that in my April wrap-up if you want to hear why this book was so disappointing to me. Lastly, we have the Book of Witches, which I believe is an anthology of witchy stories that is coming out this year, and I guess it will be illustrated. I don't believe this has illustrations in it. But that is all I can tell you about that, so I apologize for not having more information. That is the Book of Witches. And then lastly, I just want to run you guys through some of my recent approvals on NetGalley, some things that are coming out this year or have already come out that I'm really interested in case you guys want to know just kind of what types of things I request that I want to review and read. So maybe you can get an idea of my reading tastes or just things that you could have your eyes out for, or reviews that might be coming on my channel if there are any of these that you're interested in hearing more about. So I'll just quickly run through any that are duplicates from this. So I read Fourth Wing, which I had the audiobook. NetGalley was so kindly approved to listen to that early. I honestly did not realize how much that book was going to blow up when I was reading it, but I was eating it up. I absolutely loved it, gave it 5 stars. It was incredible. So thank you so much to the publisher for allowing me the chance to read and review that early, right before this massive craze, and it is well deserved. I really think you all should read that book. I also listened to the audio proof of A Crown of Ivy and Glass, which I already told you was very disappointing, so we're just gonna move right on from that one. Another one that I had requested on NetGalley and talked about already in this haul was The Isles of the Gods. I did enjoy that one and was really grateful to have that digital proof, so thank you to the publisher for that as well. Moving on to ones that I don't have physical copies of, at least not yet, I had the audio proof of That Selfsame Metal, which is a young adult fantasy, historical fantasy set in Shakespearean London. I have already reviewed that one, so I won't go into too many details, but you can find that one in my April wrap-up as well. And then some upcoming ones that you can keep your eyes out for my reviews in the future. We have Bring Me Your Midnight by Rachel Griffin. You guys, I am a couple of chapters into this one and really enjoying it. I'm a huge Rachel Griffin fan. I love the way that she incorporates nature and just common world issues into her stories. I think it's super important, and I love the way that she does it, especially in the nature of witches. So Bring Me Your Midnight is her next young adult fantasy romance story. We are following a young witch whose family has arranged her marriage to the governor of a nearby town so that witches can be accepted into society. And honestly, that's kind of all I know so far. I'm not very far into it, and I don't really want to read the synopsis because I know I love Rachel Griffin. So really grateful to have a proof of that, and you can probably get my review of that at the end of the month. And it will be coming out in August. I also have a proof of Thornhedge, which I will be reading that digital arc. This is another one by T. Kingfisher, and I believe it's kind of like a quirky Cinderella-y Princess and the Frog type of fantasy retelling. I really am having a hard time putting a finger on what genre it's supposed to be. I've heard it has like slight horror elements, but I believe our main character is like a toad princess. I'm not totally sure. It sounds really fun. I really enjoyed A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking and thought it would be fun to try another T. Kingfisher novel. Hopefully it's not too much on the horror side because I cannot handle horror. And then lastly, we have What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I believe this one is a November release, so it might be a little while till you hear my review, but I'm really looking forward to this young adult Egyptian-inspired fantasy. It sounds super fun. I believe it's set like on the Nile, and there may be some like mystery and fantasy elements to it. Again, one that the vibes were there. The Egyptian fantasy, I'm all in. So I don't need to know very much more than that. I think this is going to be a really fun read, and I'm a big fan of Isabel Ibanez. I really enjoyed her book Together We Burn, so really looking forward to jumping into that one. So those are some books that I have been requesting on NetGalley that you guys can keep your eye out for my reviews and discussions in my monthly wrap-ups coming in the future. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me for this fun book haul. Let me know in the comments some of the books that you have been picking up recently, because of course I always need to be inspired to buy more books. But that is all that I have for you today, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye, friends.